I'm Simon Lovegrove, and I help leadership teams all over the world to be the best that they can be. This is number 4 in a series of videos looking at each of the areas to address in order to drive up the performance and effectiveness of your leadership team. Number 1 looked at trust issues. Number 2 looked at setting a clear direction. Number 3 looked at accountable leaders. This one, we're looking at the team working process and how to establish a process that's fit for working. One of the most common mistakes that leadership teams make is that they do great work at the start of their lifetime, establishing a direction and establishing a strategy, and then they leave it alone as if it's there set in stone. They do not have a process for managing the strategy. They have a process for managing to the strategy, but they don't have a process for managing the strategy. And one of the first things that we do when we're working with teams is to make sure that they have a process for doing each of these and doing those separately. Because as you may understand, managing the strategy itself, having the conversations which update the strategic context, which update the vision, which add colour and detail, which take into account events and deliverables, that's a different conversation to what do we need to be addressing this month or this quarter, what are the key issues, what are the burning platforms we need to, or the burning platforms we need to respond to. And keeping those two separate is a critical part of successfully doing both. Once we've established that as a principle and established a sequence of doing that, depending on the cadence of the business, the process by which you manage the strategy itself might be relatively frequent and need frequent updating, or it may be slower. Once we've established those as separate, we then address the team process by looking at 3 areas. 1, what is the decision-making process that they have? 2, what metrics do they have and are they sufficient to support those decision-making process? And number 3, what is their practice of using those metrics? So typically, the biggest problem is with the process for managing the strategy, and that's where we usually find that the most emphasis is required. And so we seek to establish a process by which the leadership team can, at a suitable cadence, update their view of the strategic context, update the description of the direction and the vision, perhaps look at the priorities and move those around as necessary in order to take account of situations and events as they are occurring over time. For many businesses, that they can do that on a 3-monthly cycle. Some businesses can leave it for a little bit longer. Others have to have a much shorter cycle for updating that process. And it'll be different depending on what your business is. But that process needs to be something different to managing the day-to-day. Obviously, the day-to-day will inform the process of managing the strategy, but it is not something where you want to blend those two decision-making types. The second area is to understand and set a cadence for decision-making which is appropriate for the business itself. There are many businesses today which have very, very fast markets and in which things change very, very quickly. It's important, if you're in one of those businesses, that you've established a way of managing the business that is at least as fast as the speed of the change in the market. And that can mean having a decision-making process or a team briefing process which is faster than typically may be created on a logistical basis. For example, many management teams will say, we'll have a monthly management team meeting. For many businesses, that will not be sufficient. So we need to understand what that cadence is and then design a decision-making process which allows the organization to have a communication and dialogue about operational issues, update their view of the context, update their view of the strategy, and yet all be operating within an aligned view. The final area is to make sure that the business has sufficient metrics and presented in a way which allows decisions to be made. A few businesses do not have the data in order to make decisions. Those are happily in the minority. Most businesses have a different problem. They have a problem in which there is plenty of information available in the business. The difficult thing is to know what information to pay attention to, and within that, how it's presented to support decisions. The best management teams I know, and that I've worked with, focus on this and create the presentation of the data in order to support the decisions as part of that decision-making process. And what we find when we do this is that not only is the speed and quality of decision-making improved, but that the understanding about interdependency between different parts of the team is improved, and therefore the quality of teamwork and the wisdom of the decisions made by individual leaders also improves. Now, if you want to do a little test on this, there is one action that you can do which will make a difference straight away, and my bet is that you do not have a separate process for managing the strategy from managing to the strategy. So your key takeaway for this one is to establish and set up a process to manage the strategy. If that means kick it off with a meeting to look at the context and establish the vision, great. If you've already got that, then take some time out and take the management team into a process where you update that, and then kick off a process of communication to the rest of the business about how that's updated and what's going on in the business, and see what happens when you do it. Good luck.